All yours.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar today. We're going to be talking about maintaining wellness as a recovery coach. So just a high-level overview of who I am. My name is Jennifer Burns. I most recently came to CCAR as the lead facilitator. I've been working with CCAR for about a month. I was introduced to this model, in the recovery coach model, in 2012, and I have been facilitating the curriculum. I'm extremely passionate about this model. I do hold a doctoral degree in psychology with an emphasis on neuro, and my RCP and RCPF is more valuable to me because of the space that I move in. I think my motivation for obtaining my doctoral degree has a lot to do with my life experience before I went back to school. So a little like almost I'm a woman in long-term recovery. In October, my hope is to celebrate 19 years. 19 years ago, I had an 8th grade education, and I had a 6-page criminal record, and I live with the disease of addiction. And I also have experienced multiple life traumas of multiple forms. So I'm in recovery from that also. And part of my motivation to continue my education is to be able to have a seat at some of the tables where those letters matter. But my identity as a woman in long-term recovery, like I said, means more to me. And it also shows that people in recovery, the sky's the limit. We can do whatever we want as long as we live a life of recovery. So it does help to provide some hope to others also. We're not going to do introductions here, as I do facilitate, and we usually do introductions, but I would like to know who is here. So if you wouldn't mind in chat putting in your name and maybe where you come from. And if you're comfortable enough to share like a fun fact about yourself, please go ahead and do that in the chat. And I'll just take 1 minute to allow people to do that. So some of the learning objectives that we're going to talk about this morning are what is burnout? What are some of the signs and symptoms of burnout? What is your experience with burnout? And the importance of supervision. Just by show of hands, how many of you are currently in a coaching role or do coaching? Okay, beautiful, thank you. So essentially, the definition of burnout is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that's not been successfully managed. It's characterized by 3 dimensions: feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job or feelings, negativism, cynicism related to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. It's a common misconception that burnout is a result of working too many hours or working too hard, but it goes beyond that physical fatigue. There is an element of this, the professional efficacy, where there's a reduced sense of personal accomplishment and the capacity to perform. So essentially, when an individual is experiencing, and we'll talk a little bit more about signs and symptoms, but when a person is experiencing burnout in the workplace environment, it usually has a lot to do with how they're taking care of themselves, or actually lack of taking care of themselves. And we will talk a little bit about that further along in the slideshow. Is this moving? Are you able to see this I'm sorry. Here's the definition that I just read. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the prevalence. So we have the prevalence. This research was derived. The studies were largely focused on nurses, doctors, teachers, and lawyers, but anyone can experience burnout. So more than 70% of workers feel burnt out in these studies. 90% of corporate leaders feel burnout is sabotaging the workforce retention, being able to keep and maintain employees. And then if we do a quick Google workplace burnout, it gets about 88 million hits when you Google that. Employee burnout has reached epidemic proportions. It's especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, it's definitely worsened the situation. In the United States, about 7% workers reported that they feel burnt out, and that was a study done by Fisher. It estimates that suggested that burnout costs an organization 180 to about $5 billion per year in the US alone. Studies of burnout in the workplace have predominantly focused, like I said, on doctors, nurses, and lawyers. But all of those are helping fields, right? So those are all individual fields that are helping other people. So it does correlate to what we do as recovery coaches. Well, typically when we hear about workplace environment, people can experience this in any area of their life. It does. This particular webinar is focused on the workplace, but individuals can experience burnout in their lives and in their personal situations. So it's not just limited to work. However, this is where the research was derived from here. And a point I want to make too is some of the causes of burnout have to do with the reward system, right? So, and as we all know, working with individuals recovery seeking to obtain a recovery pathway, we understand, right, that addiction has to do with the reward system in the brain. So part of burnout, there's 6 components that contribute to burnout: workload control, reward, community, fairness, and values. So whether or not someone's experiencing it in the workplace, this can be attributed to personal and life relationships. So if your workload or whatever, if, like I said, I don't want to define this just as the workplace, but if you're overloaded with things, tasks, and responsibilities, when you're experiencing burnout, it becomes very overwhelming, and you're not able to manage that and organize that on time. There's also a sense of control of what having sufficient resources, time, materials, or support to do what is expected of them. So when we think about when we're working with the recovery, think about those 2 things right there. So say, for instance, the individuals reintegrating into the community after incarceration, and they have a million things they need to do to maintain their freedom according to the justice system, like say they're on probation or parole, right? So they have a low sense of control over how they're going to manage their life if they have all of these extra stipulations on them. So, and I understand we're talking about burnout as professionals, but I also want to be able to tie this into what coaches might, be, what recoveries might be experiencing too in this relationship, because they could be experiencing burnout too. So being able to identify it in self, we can better identify it in others. So a couple of the positive pieces to be able to balance out sufficient reward and feedback. So this is where we tie this into, we're the cheerleader and we're the truth teller, and as a coach, we're celebrating those little bits of successes. Okay, they showed up to the appointment today, but they didn't have their wellness plan. That's okay. We can still celebrate that they showed up to the appointment. So just being able to celebrate those small successes with individuals is extremely positive. And other social factors that play a part in reducing reducing burnout has to do with the social supports and community. So what is their recovery capital? What is our recovery capital? How far is our net? When we cast our net out, do we have, that's community support and resources to prevent getting burnout in our current positions? And are people being treated fairly? Is there transparency that's happening? And are you in a space where your values, your own personal values, align with the organizational values or systems? So that's one of the biggest pieces to the puzzle here is being able to, burnout isn't just about the individual, and we'll talk about that in further along when we talk about the myths. It has to do with the organizational systems too. So like, are you showing up, are you waking up excited to go to work every day? Excited to be a part of the organization that you work for, or your social systems. Burnout emerges when one or more of these areas are people are experiencing this, whether it's in their job or their home. And individuals have different levels of tolerance and coping skills, as all of you know, right? And we all deal with things differently. Some of our tipping points and misalignments have to do with their experience. So if we're a person that looks for the solution or the lesson in a situation that occurs in our lives, then if our mindset on how we approach situations can be beneficial to prevent burnout. Is there any questions about the causes of burnout before we move on? So some of the signs of symptoms, it is mental, physical, and emotional. And I do want to add, I do invite us to think about spiritual in this aspect. So like I said, this present webinar was derived from research that was done. And I didn't find any research on the spiritual piece of burnout. So that's why that's not included here. So I do invite us to think about that too, because as we all know, those 4 quadrants are like when we're asked, how are you mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, that does play a part. But like I said, it's not in the research. So I just wanted to demonstrate what is in the research. Physical symptoms of burnout, which of course can be assessed by a mental professional. It may include pain, heart palpitations, panic attacks, shortness of breath, some stomach problems, dizziness, fainting, headaches, chronic fatigue, or exhaustion. Some of the mental problems associated with burnout can be substance use, anxiety, depression, eating disorders, loss of self-esteem. The brain's executive functions may also be impacted by burnout, which includes concentration, short-term memory, motivation, the ability to organize and plan and follow through with tasks, learning or retaining new skills and new information. And creativity and problem solving may also be disrupted. Some of the physical signs is the individuals that impair their professional and social functioning. And in the workplace, this may show up as reduced job performance, organizational commitment. At a personal level, the person may lose interest in things that were once pleasurable, stop socializing and taking care of themselves. Is there any questions about signs and symptoms? So when we think about what's happening in the brain, studies have shown that people experiencing burnout undergo changes in 2 parts of their brain, including the frontal cortex, which is the area of the brain essential to cognitive functioning, and the amygdala, which plays a role in feelings, emotion, and mediates the transmitters essential for memory consolidation. The caudate nucleus, which plays a vital role in sorting and processing of memories and communication, and the hippocampus, which plays a role in memory. There's changes in cortisol levels, and individuals that will experience either the fight, flight, or freeze hormone that is released when they're under the stress of threat. So the good news is now that we know these parts of our brain are not hardwired, we can also understand that, there's neuroplasticity with this. So the difference between burnout and stress is that the same brain mechanisms that happen during fight or flight during a stress response, it ignites when we experience stress, and then once the stress is reduced, the cortisol production is lessened. However, in the burnout, it's like the cognitive, it continues, right? So it's, if you're experiencing burnout, this is something that you're in a state of fight or flight, much less somebody that might be experiencing a PTS syndrome. However, burnout is not in the a diagnostic criteria because it's something that can be changed with lifestyle, as opposed to PTSD, which is something that is a completely different experience, where it would need other professionals to assist you to heal that experience. So remember that there's like neuroplasticity with the burnout, and this, if we could be experiencing burnout today and put a few things in place, and by the end of the week we could be out of burnout. So it's not something that's diagnosable, that is something that can happen over a lifetime where you would have to manage it. However, there are things that we should be doing as a professional, especially in the helping field, to reduce some of those symptoms that we could experience. Some of the myths, like I said, we were going to talk a little bit about the myths. It's not about having a bad attitude. A recent study showed that 20% of employees reported that they're highly engaged with their work. They feel passionate about their jobs and committed to the organization, but discretionary effort into their work, yet they're also experiencing high levels of burnout. So it's not about having a bad attitude. It's not about your personality, and it's not an individual problem. Individuals that have the highest level of turnover usually have to do with them being disengaged from their organization. And it's not about personality. Some personality types might be more susceptible to others, but it's not an individual problem. It's too often organizations focus on individual interventions to address workplace well-being, but burnout arises because people have too much to do and the demands are being placed on them high, like micromanaging, or you know, you're having too many stressors and too many deadlines that you need to meet. And I understand, like, we're all professionals here. We all have responsibilities that we need to attend to as we're working. But the piece of the puzzle that we have to make sure that we incorporate is that we are taking care of ourselves, especially when we are in a relationship with working with a recovery. It's extremely important that we are maintaining our health and well-being. So I do want to put this into chat, and I give everybody a minute to kind of.
There it is.
So if everybody could just take a minute, there's 15 questions. Please don't think about it and just answer it honestly. I will ask that we have a conversation about this if you choose to. It's not, please don't, you don't have to share if you don't want to share. I am going to stop sharing for a minute just so I can. Is there anybody that would like to share the results? Laura?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm Laura, calling in from Portland, Maine. I'm a recovery coach in a jail setting, meeting with folks for groups and one-to-one. And I rated really high for burnout. Got a 47 score. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm happy to share it. I need help. I need this seminar so much. For me, it's, I gather from the beginning of your share, it's the lack of support at the environment where I work. It's not, yes, it's part of the work that I do with the individuals, but it's the larger system and lack of support that I can see as a huge contributor, and lack of communication with the, administration at the jail. I love the folks I work with, and so my recoveries are, maybe less of my burnout is in terms of what I've learned so far from your seminar. So that's what I got, how to sort of navigate lack of support and lack of communication with the jail administration.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'd like to ask, is there anybody here on the call that has experience working in the justice system that maybe has had some success um, or barriers that you've overcome in navigating that system? And we'll take the justice system out of it. And okay, Katrina.
So for me, I've done over 20 years in prison, and I work at Peer Connect in Colorado. I'm also the office manager there, so I also coach the coaches and have to be involved in a lot of their decisions that they're making, making sure they're doing things the way they should. We recently opened the door for more DOC clients, so we actually have an office setting that people come into. Can you mute it? And then one thing that I've come to see is I used to think that I would have a bias against some of the sex offenders. And I was actually able to overcome that as I've grown in my recovery. And here in Colorado Springs, they're so eager for us to come into the jails, come into the prison. We just talked to the federal prison yesterday about trying to bring CCAR into their program. So I think all it is with the judicial system, most of the cops are already burnt out. They're jaded, they're tired. It's they've seen so much recidivism in and out. What gives me hope when working with them is it just takes one good cop, one good administrator there who cares and who believes in recovery. We actually have a parole officer here that has made us working with them and going in and talking about who we are and what we do with Peer Connect. They've been very welcoming with it. And then the success rate that we have with clients and getting them in sober living and stuff, if we focus on the reward of actually being successfully and helping somebody become a resource and not just going back and forth to prison, that's kind of where I am able to navigate the judicial system a little bit better, because some of them have a lot of preconceived ideas about us. And it just takes a little bit of time to get them to no longer have those or be more accommodating for what we need as well. So that's what I have.
Thank you. What about navigating other systems and feeling supported? Because that is one of the key pieces to prevent burnout, is to have that, whether we're talking about workplace burnout or home life, personal burnout, it's having that social support. That's a huge piece of the puzzle of having a positive support system to be able to prevent that. We'll also talk about, there's a couple of more slides left where we'll talk about, the value of coaching supervision, because that's a piece that's important too for us as recovery coaches, is to have somebody that we're able to have those conversations with in a coaching experience and share what we're going through navigating these systems. Because as we all know, our model is very different. Our model isn't, punitive. We're not a punitive model when we're in the justice system. We're not a medical model when we're in the emergency rooms. We're not a clinical model when we're working within the treatment systems. We are recovery coach professionals, which is a very distinct role that is not widely accepted. I shouldn't say widely accepted. It is not widely understood is the correct word to say, because we are accepted in some of these systems. So the value of our role and profession is being accepted in these systems as an integrated approach to assist individuals. But I think that, like Laura shared and Katrina shared, there is, we do have to have our allies in those systems to be able to help educate and understand what our role is as a recovery coach. Anybody else want to share? Reggie, are you raising your hand?
Yes. Hi, I'm Reggie James.
Hi.
So,
Hi.
Revision House LLC, we house returning citizens from the county. And what I've noticed is that the language that's used is different than language that we use as recovery coaches. Their language is more like us and them. And you know, like when our residents come in, you know, we talk about language and attitude and demeanor, you know, right away. And I've had to kind of nurture some relationships, develop some relationships. Although there's one person who's a senior person, not the top person, that, you know, is more of a social entrepreneur, and she understands, you know, our concept, because a lot of it is, you know, even though they're well-meaning when they come into the job, you know, in social services and corrections, you know, they get tainted, and because of bureaucracy and old rules, they're not open to try different things, basically, you know. So, you know, what was mentioned about, you know, having an ally, or having or cultivating various allies on different levels, you know, is key. And it takes time, and it's a mutual respect. And I think it's the way that I or my team interacts, the language we use, our demeanor, just asking good questions, and listening, you know, intently, and handling our own biases. You know, I mean, it all comes back to that. And it's a long road, but I see some progress. I see some progress in their attitude in terms of us being. I remember using the word partners, and the person from the county said, "We're not partners. You're a vendor." You know, I said, "Well, you know, let's you know, let's look into that. Let's dissect that." And you know, at the end of the conversation, she understood, and it you know, elevated the conversation, and it went in the right direction.
Thank you.
Okay.
So partnership and vendor is now an interchangeable word, is what I heard. Well done, Reggie. Excellent. Did anybody else want to share of experiences of support within your organization? Is there anybody on the call who has good support at their organization for their health and wellness? Katrina, did you want to share a little bit about that?
Yep. So what we did for our recovery coaches is we got them a gym membership that has full service. We started a program as well called Getting Fit with Peer Connect. We have individuals available if they're struggling or if we notice they are. And we've really been working on helping them become healthy in all the 8 dimensions. And one of them is we have the gym membership. They go 3 to 4 times a week. They can go on their own time. They can take our clients, and we signed up for the full membership. So it even includes the massage and pretty much everything but a personal trainer. So it's helped a lot because it's a stress reliever. It's a time to come together. It builds community, and it also just allows them to feel healthier and to pay attention to where they're at on the dimension scale, and which areas of their life they're taking care of. So it's been successful so far.
Excellent. Thank you. Barry?
Hey, good morning. So
Good
I'm
morning.
Barry Richardson. I am a regional manager for CCAR's emergency department. And we schedule regular coaching visits with, you know, the coaches and with my supervisor, and we all sit down and talk about it. And one of the main things we definitely stress is how are you taking care of yourself, you know, as opposed to, you know, not just your work performance. What are you doing for your self-care? And usually, you know, sometimes coaches tend to forget about self. You know, they get caught up into, you know, the day to day, and sometimes we try to come up with a plan for each coach to do something individually for their own self-care. And, you know, and try to hold them accountable, you know, check in with them, you know, how you doing on that, you know, did you read that book? Did you take that vacation? Did you do this, what you said you were gonna do? And I think it has been beneficial to the overall health of our team. So that's all I got.
Excellent. Thank you. So I'm noticing some of the scores that individual that are put into chat. Does anybody want to talk about the scores? Shared in chat. Were you surprised with the scores? Oh, thanks, Travis.
I can say that I was not surprised by my score. We're expected to do above and beyond at the agency that I work for. I work for a housing agency that houses homeless individuals, and I've been working on incorporating some skills of recovery coach training into the agency, but everybody kind of is siloed in their own little experience on a daily basis. And then it seems like when they come back to the office, it's like a dump and ends up dumping on everybody. And administration is just so far removed from what is happening on boots on the ground in the field that like they're just barking more orders at us instead of like actually understanding where we're coming from. One of my most recent experiences is I had an individual that I'm not going to go into his mental health diagnosis, but like very abrupt with me, and I felt unsafe, and the only thing I was told is take a coworker with you. And my feelings of feeling unsafe and why I felt unsafe were not even addressed. So I have learned that I have to seek my support outside of my agency. And so I have a mentor outside of my agency. I have a therapist that I see on a regular basis outside of my agency to bounce these things off so that I can manage me when I'm in the agency. Because it's apparent to me that my agency is not going to help provide that for me.
That's excellent, Wanda, and thank you for taking the steps you need to make sure that those social supports are in place. It's unfortunate that you're experiencing that within the organization. However, I'm grateful that, especially the crisis level, that you're working with individuals that are unhoused, that you're getting those supports for yourself to hopefully maintain health and wellness and not experience burnout in your position. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for taking care of yourself. Dr. Pachman?
Oh, yes. I just wanted to say one thing. You had stated that they haven't done any research on spirituality, and what keeps my self-care under control is the spiritual component. I do spiritual recovery, and I offer that to a lot of the peers because there's a way to address some of those spiritual core or spiritual issues that with the proper correction and information, they can get the support to release some of the things that they normally won't let go, or things that come after them that's not meant to be. So
Beautiful.
that, I just wanted to let you know that is a way that I process to keep everything managed, even in a toxic or distractive environment.
Beautiful. Thank you for bringing that into the conversation. I appreciate it because I, like you, that's my base. Like if I need to be spiritually grounded before I can do anything. So I appreciate you bringing that into the conversation. Did you, if you don't mind sharing, because I heard you say spiritual practices, just to elaborate a little bit further for others that might not know that pathway, do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. I integrate faith and higher power into spiritual recovery. I feel that for some people, because of hope, hope in their recovery, sometimes it could be in a level that you can't reach them. So I allow them the opportunity to process through a spiritual component in their higher power or whatever they feel that they can embrace to bring them to a higher level. In that, I feel that that's one of my major approaches to helping people because of the comfort and the safety that comes from having a spiritual resource. And I teach them how to tap into those resources and also to allow those resources to cover them emotionally, psychologically, and as well as spiritually.
Thank
So,
you.
thank you.
Seeing a lot of good things in chat. Is there anybody else, before we move on to the value of coaching and supervision, is there anybody else that wanted to share a little bit further about their scores or ways they manage? Ed, I see your hand up. Are you able to hear me? I don't.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I am. Jennifer, I want to say thank you. I've been enjoying this presentation and your thoughts. You had mentioned something. You changed how you spoke about the recovery coach. We don't accept them. No, we don't understand them. And I think one of the things that I have the privilege of being able to do is moderate a monthly call for the New York City Peer Recovery Coach Network. One of the things that I hear so often from individuals is that they have difficulty working with supervisors, trying to get support, trying to get feedback, all of this, and trying to be managed properly. I've come to believe personally that it's very difficult for me to embrace and accept something that I don't understand. And while they may accept us without the full understanding of what we do and how we do it, I never feel that individuals get the full support that they should be getting. And I think that is also a contributor to stress.
Absolutely.
So I wish there was some form or some process by which people who are supervising or managing recovery coach, that they cannot do that position until they fully first have some sense of understanding fully what that role is and what it does, because they are not clinical, they are not medical, they are not all of the things that you said they are. We are unique, but we don't have a unique support system in place.
Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like is some direction we might need to head in, right? I know that it's unfortunate. So I'm in Massachusetts, and in Massachusetts we do have a recovery coach supervision training that you need to go through. And Travis, if you could speak a little bit more on CCAR, because I know that CCAR has an amazing support system for that too. And I'm not sure if maybe a conversation, Ed, to be able to understand the trainings that the supervisor needs to go through that can be implemented in New York as well.
Jennifer, I totally agree with you. And there are things that are happening in recent times to support and do the supervisory trainings and things. But sometimes, even though there are tools out there that exist, and there are, people do not take advantage of them.
True. That's a great point. Travis, did you want to talk a little bit more about the structure of within our organization?
About coach revision? Is that what you're
Yes.
Yeah, so
I know Barry talked a little bit too about it.
yeah, and actually, excuse me, I might even defer to Barry here, but basically the idea, and I'll keep it very simple, is that the same principles we use with recovery coaching, we apply it to how we supervise, right? So treating people as resources, asking good questions, active listening, you know, the three-legged stool for those of you that understand. Barry, do you mind sharing kind of like what that looks like, because you are a recovery coach supervisor? I think this is a great time for that.
Oh, sure. So,
Thank you.
so basically, and you said that we use basically three-legged stool, and most of the, like, we have pretty much have personal relationship. So me, myself personally, I was a recovery coach. I coached in the ED for 4 years prior to becoming a supervisor. So I had boots on the ground experience of what the coaches are going through in their day-to-day interaction with each other and with recoveries and with hospital staff. So I could kind of identify, you know, some of the areas, and by using them as resources, asking them, you know, what's going on with them, where they're at, how they're doing, you know, and what are they doing for themselves, you know, and asking all those questions and allowing them to direct the conversation. It's like I would a recovery, like, you know, because it's theirs. And asking them, you know, just being there for support. Let them know that they're not alone and that they have support. Period. And, you know, and no more than that, because, you know, we don't. None of us really like to be told what we need and what to do. I want you to, you know, decide what you need and what you want to do about it. What, you know, what's the most positive? Most of the time, we have our own answers. So, and as a supervisor, I just, you know, I try to be available regularly, and I try to be some support on a regular basis to the people that I supervise. So pretty much, you know, just treat them as a resource, as always, as treat them like I would want to be treated, you know. And at the same time, you know, I have a manager that does the same thing for me. And sometimes I do it for him. We help each other. You know what I mean? So thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful, thank you. And that segues us right into the value of supervision. And I do appreciate, Ed, that you said, you know, people don't take advantage of the resources available. And unfortunately, that's a predictor, right, of burnout and other behaviors and mannerisms that can occur in a working situation. The value. So I did hear multiple people talk about the importance of supervision, but also I do want to recognize that I heard people share that they're not receiving that in that relationship, but they are able to get that outside of their organization. So I appreciate you all showing up and being able to share your experiences with it. If we think of it's our ethical responsibility, right, as in the helping field, as recovery coaches, as people helping other people, to have a system in place, whether it is something that we create or something that is within our organization. If you're fortunate enough to be in an organization that supports this, to have supervision. Because that when we're in a relationship, I heard, like what I heard Barry say essentially is that, and I've experienced that too in the month that I've been here. You know, my supervisor, you know, talks to me and we have a conversation, and little do I know during this conversation, he's identifying areas where I might need to improve upon, or areas that I'm doing well in. And that's, we're just having a conversation, and I'm being coached in that conversation, right? So I'm coming up with my own solutions during that conversation. So that is my hope for individuals that are able to have that support system in the organization, because it is so important. It maintains ethical practices. It definitely improves health and well-being within the organization. And it also, when we're in a relationship with somebody that in the supervision relationship, and we're able to have it in a conversation, and it's not in a hierarchical, you know, manner in the coaching role. If we're being coached, like mentor, I love that it was brought up that somebody has a mentor outside of their organization, it really helps to maintain our sense of well-being, because we feel valued, when we feel valued as employees, our productivity goes up. We're less likely to engage in unethical behaviors. Our service of delivery is, optimal. We're doing optimal work, and we have to really understand, like, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, because I know that everybody is passionate about the populations we serve. And I've heard multiple different subpopulations within the realm of recovery, right? So individuals that we work with, the recoveries that we coach, come with a lot of different elements to their situations, right? I've heard justice involved on this call. I've heard unhoused involved on this call. So there's multiple layers of the individual that they are relying. And I know that the coaching relationship is we're on the same page, we're on the same field. But they are in the beginning relying on us and trusting us to really help and guide them and assist them in their recovery process. Even though our relationship with them is, we treat them as the resource and they are the expert, that's not usually the perception when they're entering the relationship with us. They're looking at us as if we are the expert and we're going to, devise a treatment plan and blah, 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 because that's been their experience in different pathways of recovery. So having that in mind, and as long as we are taking care of ourselves, definitely makes us more effective at what we do. And the last and final slide, and then there's some slides on, there's some references, and this will all be available. I know that we're being recorded, and I know that I can send out the slide deck to the participants that have attended also. So if you are interested in the resources that were used to create this webinar, you'll have them at your disposal. But I also wanted to take us to the wellness wheel. And I know that a couple of you have spoken about the wellness wheel. And the question is what has been helpful for you to maintain wellness? Because at the end of the day, stress, burnout, effective coaching has to do with how we are taking care of ourselves. I love that Dr. Parkman brought in the spiritual piece to this, and maybe her and I can get together and do some research on spirituality and burnout to be able to bring this into a future webinar, because it is an important part of the puzzle, especially for individuals on a recovery pathway. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop share for a minute and just put that question out there and hope that we can have a little bit of a discussion on what has been helpful for you to maintain wellness, so that others on the call that maybe aren't doing that might be able to engage in some practices to reduce the burnout that they're experiencing and or prevent it from happening in the future. Khalees?
Yeah, Khalees. I'll share
Khalees.
So
Thank
I
you.
am a recovery coach professional and facilitator, and I feel like it's very important that I also role model taking care of myself, since I am also a facilitator. I have boundaries, like anybody who does training with us, I talk a lot. I'm always busy, but I'm very firm that every Saturday I have date night with my son. If people in our community are in our community, they probably heard me say that, because I'm like, every Saturday I have date night with my son. We go on walks, we play board games, we do whatever, but it's like having those things I do regularly. I also see my own coach every Monday. Every Monday I see my own coach. I'm a facilitator. I got to manage my stuff. I have to manage my stuff. And I go for walks. I journal. I do a lot of reflecting. I also do a lot of ongoing continuous development for myself. I mean, personally, like learning would definitely be a pathway in my recovery, because I'm like a sponge. I'm just curious naturally, but I still do all of those things. And I have to do that to keep myself in check. And I think it's very important that I do that as well, because I am a recovery coach professional and facilitator. How am I supposed to support others and on a journey of self-discovery and self-improvement if I myself am not willing to do the same.
Excellent. Thank you. Marcus?
Unmute. How about unmute? Can you hear me?
We can
Hello?
hear you.
Okay. Yeah. And just to follow up what the young lady was saying, yes, I must make sure I'm first. I'm a recovery coach and facilitator as well. So the information that I give out, I have to make sure I'm practicing, telling them to take care of themselves, eat right, sleep right, and things like that of that nature, and exercise. I have to do it myself. I have a busy schedule. I work full time at a center. I'm a chef, and I'm expected to perform at a high level. But also, I'm a single parent, so I have to really balance a lot of stuff and micromanage a lot of stuff. But first and foremost, I take my expectations out my job. I don't go in there with any expectations. I really take a look at what am I providing. I'm there to be of a service. And as long as I take my expectations out, I'm a little bit more accepting of things that go on. High acceptance, low expectations. And when I feel one is outweighing the other with the expectations, then I know I'm off kilter. So I have to regroup and do my maintenance. I'm a big advocate of doing service work at the church and things like that. That spiritual aspect is a big component because it grounds me. And I have to really come back to where I started at and things like that. I have to remember at one point in time I was in their shoes. So I look at that too. The other part, the administration part, I don't mess with it. I just do what I'm asked, try to manage it as well as I can, and I stay in my lane. I really practice staying in my lane today. And that helps me just really do what I need to do. And as long as I do that, I got a good balance. I might get quirky here and there, but I just again say I'm of service. I took this profession on, and so I'm of service. They didn't come asking me. I wouldn't ask them, can I be of help? So I always keep that in mind when I'm asked to do something. And it's helped so far. It's helped so far. So if I keep that how I started, it should work out. I go back to an old analogy. When dating, the first things you do in dating, you're gonna have to keep that up throughout that relationship in order to maintain that relationship and communication. So this is like that. I'm in this for a long haul for the most part. So I got to keep it fresh and remember what I'm asked to do it more so than what I need them to do for me.
Yeah. Dr. Parkman?
I would just like to say self-care is real important. When people don't take care of themselves, is very, especially in the type of field when we're playing dual roles. I'm a therapist and I'm a recovery supervisor. And a lot of withdrawals and those deposits put you on bankrupt. And if you don't master first yourself, you can become a wounded healer, because it's not very effective for you to present to others when you're broken or you're down or you're stressed out, because you're not your best. So whatever you master determines how effective you're going to be. And first it has to start with you. And sometimes when I'm in a situation where I feel like there's too many withdrawals, I'll put it like that, you have to stop and get some deposits. And however you utilize those deposits, whether it's spiritual, whether it's through a spiritual advisor or from a sponsor or from a peer support one-on-one, you have to get those deposits. If not, those are things that keep you refreshed, resilient, and wonderfully and fearfully made. I like to keep myself balanced, and I think balance has a lot to do with our ability to be effective, to serve, and out of serving come excellence. And I have to start with myself and loving me enough to take out the time to get the things I need to make my life work. So I just thought that this evaluation that you just did was really interesting. I was at a 22, and I that lets me know I've been working on that part of my life. We're not all experts when it comes down to us, We serve until we slave ourselves out, and we can also get ourselves in trouble with our health and our wealth. So, I just wanted to say that, that was important to me that I did that assessment, and thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you. And I love how you talk about the deposits, right? So one thing that I do is like we have tools, right? So on my cell phone, every hour, there's a reminder to like breathe, get up and drink water, to be grateful, so every hour, because I can get in a zone, right? I can get tuned out in a zone, forget to do lunch, forget to not take care of self on a daily basis. So that's where, and it was actually in a supervision relationship where they're like, you have a tool that you can use to remind you if you need to. So that's one thing that I do is there's reminders constantly going off and on my phone every hour to remind me, because what we're talking about too, right? We're talking about neuroplasticity and we're talking about training our brains to do something different. So even though I don't look at the reminder every hour, I know that that it's going off, and that prompts me to like, okay, get up and get away from the computer right now and, go breathe some fresh air and drink a glass of water, your work, and then come back to your work. So those are some things that I do on a daily basis. And, and I do like if you could see the space around me, like I've got crystals, I've got like little toys to get me centered. I'm surrounded by self-care elements because I'm a remote worker and I need to have that in my space. One of the other things I do too is I draw cards, and like, so the card I drew for today, it's from the Starseeds deck, and it's creation. It says, being creative is a wonderful way of witnessing the unfolding of your limitless creative soul. And I was in the Advanced Academy last week, and we talked about that, right? Tapping into like we needed to draw pictures of what we believed certain things were, and being able to take time to do that daily, whatever that creativity is for you. Like that's another piece. That's another piece of the puzzle to our brain. And I love how you had said the wounded healer, right? So because most times my experience in the past 20 years of working in this field is that individuals usually come with a story, and that's why we're the most effective to be doing the work we do, is because we do know what it's like to be where the individuals are that we're assisting, right? But it's important for us to do that. And I know that we didn't talk about stress, and I don't want to equate burnout with stress, although some of the physical symptoms that occur in the body during burnout are similar to chronic stress. And chronic stress is the #1 killer in the United States, right? It's a cardiovascular diseases, right? So just, know that we are not machines. We're humans, and we need to take care of ourselves. And I love what everybody has shared and brought into this space. And I do want to continue the conversation for a little longer, because I would love to hear from a few more people before we end this webinar. I think the question that I put in, I put 2 questions in the chat. I think, what has been helpful for you to maintain wellness, or what is one thing you can do on a daily basis to take care of yourself? Any takers?
Thanks. When I think of self-wellness, I think taking care of ourselves and protecting ourselves. And for me personally, there's nothing better for me to take care of myself and protect myself than establishing boundaries. Because once I establish boundaries and understanding of boundaries and help the people that I work with, help them create their boundaries as well, I can set up a schedule that I can honor and maintain with my fellow people that I work with. The second thing is boundaries allow me to say no. The third thing is that boundaries also allow me to schedule my time, and my time is precious because my time allows me to reconnect spiritually, physically and emotionally. That allows me to be physical. I love to run. I jog every day. I do my me time. And I also have my spouse, and we have our playtime and our together time to rejuvenate me and refill me and replenish me, along with my spiritual time and meditation. So it always goes back to boundaries. And when I get flustered and when I am feeling less than, I only have to go back to my boundaries and say, oh, I've been jumping over the fences and I've not been saying no, and I've not been taking care of myself. So thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you. Brianna?
Yes, good morning. Some things that I have been recently doing, and I have been since I myself came into recovery, is I meditate regularly, whether that's I do it in the morning and at night, but I also have been making time throughout my day, even if it's just 5-minute, session to sit by myself in quiet, or I'll put on a guided meditation. I'll go sit in a separate room alone so that I can just take those moments to breathe deeply, recenter, and just kind of reset myself for the day, to move forward. And then on my way into work, because I do have quite a commute, I've been listening to a lot of motivational talks or speeches and spiritual talks, just to really set me up for the day, like just to make sure that I have my mindset in a positive place, so that when I show up, I'm ready to take on whatever is coming at me and just be able to show up as my best self for my recoveries. So thank you.
Thank you. Barry?
I know prayer and meditation is definitely a big part of my day, and has been, part of my recovery. But what I found out real helpful for me is like the transition between work and home, right? Is I usually I pull over, I got a little spot, I pull over for like 15 minutes after work, and I just sit and I just kind of just don't answer the phone, don't do nothing for the 15 minutes. And it helps my transition into my, when I get home, I'm a much better person at home, because sometimes right after work is still there, no matter what I say. So those 15 minutes every day, and it's easy. Nobody misses me for those 15 minutes. I found that out. I used to think I gotta hurry up and get home. Nobody misses me for 15 minutes. So I take 15 minutes for myself, and that's been very helpful. So thanks.
That's wonderful. And you bring up a really great point about not bringing work stuff into the home. So thank you for taking, that 15 minutes before to transition into home life. I appreciate that. Thank you. Cody?
Yeah, I would say, you talked about like spirituality. So when I was out in active use, like I was spiritually bankrupt. So, when I got in recovery, on a daily basis, like I try to get spiritually fit on a daily basis, because I feel like for me, getting spiritually fit and everything else comes together, so like, meditating, just staying connected with my higher power, because it was me leaving him not leaving me. So staying spiritually connected and trying to get spiritually fit on a daily basis for me.
Beautiful. Thank you. I do want to bring our attention to a question that Barry just asked in the chat. And the question is compassion fatigue the same as burnout? So compassion fatigue has to do, it's a symptom of burnout, right? So compassion fatigue, it is it's a symptom. If for those of you who don't on the call that aren't familiar with compassion fatigue, basically you get to a point where you're experiencing an overabundance of burnout, probably some vicarious trauma, and I don't want to go down the clinical realm with this, but that is the formula of compassion fatigue. So it's beyond burnout, but it's definitely a symptom of. So you don't want to get to compassion fatigue. So thank you for asking that question. I appreciate that, Barry. Tanya?
Yes, for compassion fatigue is just to piggyback off of what you were saying is more like you go in compassionate. You're gonna be the super peer. You're gonna do this, you're gonna do that, and it's like you know, then once you are overworked and you feel like you're not getting support, then the compassion for what you were doing becomes fatigued. You just don't have it in you. It's like, oh, forget this, forget that. So that's how I notice if, like with compassion fatigue for me.
Excellent, thank you. All right, beautiful. I appreciate you all showing up today. If nobody else wants to share or comment or bring something else, I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon.